As the novel pandemic COVID-19 outbreak is taking a toll on millions of people around the world, I thank God Almighty for keeping us safe and also for helping us conduct this webinar on behalf of the Department of English under the leadership of Reverend Father Joshi Chirankuri CMI, the principal of KCMT, and Mr. Cijo Joseph Chennelil, the head of the department. I, Aishwarya Biju, and Aleena of second year BA English together welcome you all to the webinar on interdisciplinary interaction with the Bard of America. Before we begin, let us take a moment of silence. I request the participants to take note of a few guidelines for the smooth conduct of the webinar. I request the participants to mute the audio to avoid any kind of disturbances. I also request the participants not to post anything in the chat box unless you have a question to raise. All the questions that are intended for the Q&A session are to be posted in the chat box. A feedback form will be posted in the chat box at the end of the webinar, where an e-certificate will be mailed to you upon its completion. Now, I invite Ms. Aleena of second year BA English for the welcome speech.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to one and all present here. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this auspicious occasion. Thank you each for being here today. I truly esteem to welcome all of you as the part of this webinar. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our dear principal, Reverend Father Joshi Chirankuri, CMI, who with his excellent managerial skills is rightly the pillar of this institution. Unfortunately, he could not join us today. Thank you, Father, for your constant support. Now, I welcome Honorable Chief Guest, talented and aspiring poet Annette Tarpley ma'am, whose presence and words will surely evoke our thoughts, and who has the capability to enlighten us with her valuable teachings. I hereby welcome ma'am to this webinar. Cijo Joseph Chennelil, head of the English department, is an individual who hardly needs an introduction. He delights us with his expertise and knowledge in every way possible. I welcome you, sir, to this webinar. And our sincere appreciation to Ms. Sheena Susan Baby, who generously helped us in making this event become a reality. I also welcome all the KCMTC students and the ones joining in now, hoping that each of you will gain an insight from the session. I welcome all of you once again and hoping you will all have a fruitful session. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleena. Mr. Cijo Joseph Chennelil, head and heart of the English department, whose faith and motivation always helps us to be better. Now, I invite Cijo sir to introduce our speaker. Sir, your mic is muted.
Thank you for reminding me about that. Respected Reverend Father Joshi Chirankuri CMI, the principal of KCMT, Kristu College of Management and Technology. Sheena Miss, Nisi Miss, and other English department teachers who are already here. And my dear students. Actually, this is an interdisciplinary sort of interaction, wherein I will pose questions to Annette regarding so many things about her own homeland, about the political, social, economic, religious, moral, economic aspects of America, and this is for the first time probably that you get an opportunity to interact with a naturalized American. I think in terms of your sixth semester and also other semesters, you have subject areas in which you will have to deal with the struggles of the Native Americans, the Afro-Americans, and other ethnic groups, especially living and residing in America. So this particular section will give you much exposure regarding those things. And when a person from the ground zero, when she says something about those people, those struggles, those turbulences, those experiences, I think that will come in handy for us. Make no mistake about that. But Annette is not all about that. It's something more than that. For example, respected Annette Tarpley is a prominent American poet of simple style. That's why I like about her. Very simple, very straightforward in her writings, in her articulations, and in her renditions. Make no mistake about that. And profound thought patterns. Her poetic works do have the inherent quality to unearth the intricacies synonymous with life. Life is evaluated, life is unearthed, explored by Annette inside out in a threadbare manner. That is what she has done through her works so far, and that's why she has become an endearing figure to many creative beings around the world, across the globe. Make no mistake about that. And her poetic outputs are endowed with the social themes, straightforward wavelength, honest renditions, some unsubstance evocations, versatility, audacity, and pinpointed sort of expressions. Actually, she might have written about all conceivable under the sun. That is why I like her. That's why I like her poetry, her poems. Means the unique style of expression, that unique style of getting into the reader's mind, into their psyche. That is her speciality. And that is why I think since she started a poetry group or poetry organization, it grew leaps and bounds within no time. And I think the success will come to her naturally because of her natural ability to express herself in a poetic way, in an imaginative way. The indomitable spirit shown by her in the world of poetry is worthy of emulation by the younger generation. I think many of the younger generations should take heart from her because she has done a yeoman service to the world of poetry. Many of them, they needed to imitate her, emulate her, and they should walk her footpaths because, or they should follow her footpaths because she does have the natural ability to delineate, to express herself. And her poetry group entitled The Passion of Poetry is all set to reach greater heights in the horizon of poetry. Within 1 year, or within a span of 1 year, almost 10,000 members. She has reached that hallmark of 10,000 members. That is quite an achievement. Make no mistake about that. That is something that's why I rate her higher. Because many of the much touted poetry organizations have not come near that kind of mark. We are so privileged to get such a towering personality in the world of poetry as a resource person of this interdisciplinary interaction. So, Annette, welcome to this particular interdisciplinary interaction. Before I start, I will say something to the student community in general. It's an interdisciplinary interaction section. So we will discuss, we will go beyond the parameters of literature, beyond the reach of literature. We'll discuss about so many other aspects related to literature because as you all know, today literature has become an interdisciplinary subject. If you know something about different branches of literature, such as poems or short stories or dramas or anything of that sort, you can't make headways in the world of literature because literature has become an interdisciplinary subject. It absorbs all the subject areas in the world. So if you have any doubts regarding any other, for example, literature is sociology, literature is philosophy, literature is medicine, literature is economics. Literature touches upon all layers of our society, all arenas of our society, or realms and domains of our society. So it may be truly, this particular discussion and interaction will be truly an interdisciplinary sort of interaction. We follow an interdisciplinary approach to this particular interaction session. So if you like to raise any question, you are most welcome. And definitely it is a freewheeling, no holds barred sort of a section wherein she will discuss about so many issues inside out. Make no mistake about it. So Annette, please, I think you are muted. Please unmute yourself. Yes, Annette, welcome to this interdisciplinary interaction. The first thing I would like you to do, can you give a message? You are from America, addressing maybe from a long distance, addressing our student in KCMT. Please give a message to the young ones listening to you.
Okay. Well, it's my privilege and honor to have been invited today to be with you all. And my message is that poetry and literature in general is very important in our society. It's a way of expression and a wonderful way to ventilate your feelings and thoughts. Although I do quite a bit of fictional poetry too, so it isn't all factual, but it certainly is a wonderful way to express yourself, and anyone can do it. And so you just have to write. And I get asked that all the time, how do I write, or how do I do poetry? So, but my message is for you all, and I think you're all in college, and so I hope that you find your path and decide what you want to do, and I hope that literature and even poetry is part of it.
Okay. The other one, the other question I would like to pose to you is this. I think, can you talk to me about the educational system, especially in America? Actually, do you follow a practical mode of education or a theoretical mode of education? And what are the pitfalls, the drawbacks of both these systems? First, I would like you to answer about whether do you follow a practical mode of education over there or a theoretical mode of education?
I think a little bit of both, actually. So I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. College, of course, is a very important thing, and some choose to do it and some choose not to do it. But it's certainly, I went to college and have my master's degree in nursing, and had went to school, parts of all my life, and continue to go to school. It was always very important for me to be educated. Not everybody has that drive or that stamina to go to college and to go to school. You have to have a drive and a commitment, because it really is part of your life, isn't it? Every day that you have to commit to your studies, and that it kind of consumes your life throughout, your college education. But I would say it's both. I would say there's a little bit of both.
Do parents they support their children children in getting educated in America, or do they fund their education on their own, especially the college education?
Well, some do. Some who have the means to do that do. There's other people who don't. So there's options, of course, for people to get education, student loans, and so forth and so on. I personally never got any help with my education. I paid for my education. And I tried to pay for my children's education for a little while, until they, when they fall back on their studies or something. And so they paid for their way through college too, through loans. I felt like, it's good if parents can pay it, but I felt like they would really be more involved and dedicated to their studies if they, knew that they had a part in paying for it. But there are some funds that are set aside that you can do when your children are young, for, of course, for college, where you can set aside funds for college education and so forth. But so yes, some parents fund it, other parents don't, and they need to take out student loans. So it's a bit of both.
Okay, I think the other question, the question I am going to ask, we have discussed. Discussed earlier, and I would like to. I think for our children to get, or for the students to get insight into that. I think it's better that you answer to this question. Maybe it may be a repetition for you, but again, I want you to answer to this question. I would request you to answer to this question. See, what about the racial relationship, especially in the United States of America? Especially the relationship between the white and the blacks. I mean, I may not call them blacks, I will call them Afro-Americans.
Well, it's certainly much better now than it has been in the past, although it depends. Through history, it seems to wield its ugly head occasionally as far as prejudice and racial tension and so forth. And of course, that recently was the case, where we had that incident last year. So it still exists in society. Both races have their own prejudices and so forth, but I see a lot more people embracing, I think, other people of color and so forth. I think it's very important. When my children were growing up, I always taught them that you see the person for the person, not their color and or their culture, and you are accepting to all people. So, and they grew up that way. My daughter actually has an interracial marriage. She has 2 children. Well, she's about to have her 2nd child. And so I had a friend once ask me, why is it that your daughter is attracted to black people? I said, well, she's not. She has love for everybody, and she doesn't see the color. She sees the person. And that's what I love about my daughter. So, it still exists, unfortunately. I think that the more sometimes we speak about it, the more racial tensions, it keeps kind of brewing in the background. So, instead of, it's almost like I want everybody to ignore it. Why even talk about color? Because then when you talk about it and you bring up that subject matter, then actually you're bringing up the differences and not our commonalities as humans and as societies and different cultures, and embracing each other. So it still exists, and probably always will. But I think it's much better as far as people are very much more accepting. There's a lot of interracial, marriages and relationships. So I think society as a general whole has been more accepting to that in our culture today.
Okay, let us take up the issue that you might have made a passing reference to. That was all about the George Floyd issue. That means you hold certain strong views regarding that particular issue. As I have already told you, that it is a free-wielding, no holds barred sort of discussion. Anything you would like to say, you can say. I would like to ask you a question related to that incident. George Floyd, he was suffocated to death. A policeman put his knee on the neck of him, and he was choked to death. What do you think about such kind of brutality committed on the black people by especially the white race in general? I'm not saying that I'm not generalizing the white race here, but just that incident gripped the imagination of the general public all throughout the world. That's why I asked you this specific question.
Yes, well, that incident was tragic, and unfortunately, it happens much too much in our society. And I very much am a proponent against that type of thing, and brutality against. And so, I think sometimes they narrow in on the race and will be suspecting them of doing things. For instance, I remember watching a show years ago where they were trying to get shoplifters in a thing, and they had cameras and everything in there. And they would, definitely zone in on the black people that came in as possible people that would be stealing, and so forth, and even people of that same race. There's still social unrest. There's police brutality. It happens among other races as well, including white people. There are statistics as far as brutality with the police officers, or even deaths. And actually, I think that there's more. They said white people that have been killed than black people, but maybe that's, I don't know. I looked into that once and looked at the statistics, and it was different. But I think that that type of thing incites then people to do things like lash back out, and Black Lives Matter, and they do matter, but all lives matter. So I think once they started that Black Lives Matter, I mean, this is my belief, that also set up racial tensions, because then you're separating them again, and you're not saying that all lives matter. There's a poem that I sent to you that I wrote, that all lives matter. I thought it was a very positive thing, embracing wanting us to unite as a society, not seeing differences, love, peace, happiness. And I posted on one website, and they just tore it down. And I couldn't figure out why they were tearing it apart, because I didn't think there was anything to tear apart. And that's why I gave it to you, and you end up doing your analysis of it. So hopefully, so it's funny how you can even write something and you think it's in a positive tone, and then somehow it's dissected and seen as, kind of a negative thing, where I did not think at all it was. Did you think it was negative?
Actually, yes, I got your poem, All Lives Matter. That poem is titled as not Black Lives Matter, but All Lives Matter. I gave a critical analysis on that poem, and I have not seen anything wrong with respect to that particular poem at all. But after this George Floyd's death, the Blacks Lives Matter movement, it raged in the world, and in America, the people who participate, I may not blame those people who participate in the movements in resorting to violence or anything of that sort, but they engaged in extreme violence. They ransacked buildings, they vandalized properties belonging to both races, and so on and so forth. What do you think about this kind of violence being unleashed in the name of a particular movement? Either it comes from the black community or the white community.
Well, I can certainly see where the anger comes, and there's a way for it to be unleashed somehow, whether it's a positive or it's a negative manner. And, we have a choice in what we do in our actions, how we respond. And the whole black community didn't respond in such a way, of course, but there were segments that did, and looted and stole, and violence ensued. And so I can understand their anger and their rage at the incident. Having seen that video of his death was, horrific, and it was horrible. So I can understand the rage and so forth. But I don't think that was the type of response that was needed, and certainly didn't help racial tensions any. So I feel like it would have been so much better if they would have done that, if instead they would have went and kind of attacked it with some dignity, and maybe went out to the communities and spoke and so forth, but not the violence that ensued. It just adds fuel to the fire. So as long as those things happen, and then you have the response like you did, you'll have that. I have this philosophy where you strike when the iron's cold instead of when it's hot. Because when you strike when it's hot, you're going to do things that you normally wouldn't do. But if you wait till, you kind of react, and, when you're cooled down, the response will be much different. So, and I think we know that as human beings, that, how we react in a moment when something happens is much worse than later. But I don't agree with the way some people reacted, but I understand it.
Okay.
I understand the rage.
Yeah, I think that's the right attitude, and that's also a positive attitude rather than a pejorative attitude. Actually, one more question related to race in the United States of America. That is there institutional racism there in the United States of America? I think we all like to know about that, because I think we also get ideas about the institutional racism existing in the body politics of America. Is there? Because you are reporting from, or you are in the ground zero. So you are living in the ground zero, you may be able to enlighten us on that.
Actually, the very first part of that I missed out on. So your question was what?
Actually, it's all about the institutional racism. Does it exist in the United States of America?
The institution of racism?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Course. Of course it does. Yeah, it certainly does. On both levels, people, and racism exists. I mean, it's not just a United States thing; it's throughout the, world. But I think that although it exists, like I said before, things have gotten better. Although there's always incidents like this that will happen and occur and be tragic things, and then it will incite, people to react to it. So it exists, unfortunately. But I think the young generation, such as my daughter's generation, my children's generation, is probably much more accepting of race than previous generations, where racism really flourished. And but those tensions still exist. People still say things that are racial, and it still is part of our society, unfortunately.
See, one more thing. See, after this George Floyd incident, and during this Black Lives Matter movement, I think many of the black people or the Afro-Americans and other ethnic groups, they started destroying the statues of colonial figures. Even they attacked in Britain the statue of Winston Churchill, the wartime Prime Minister of Great Britain, and also they tried to tear down the statues of other colonial figures and so on and so forth. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the Civil War was, of course, our war. And I'm from Iowa, which is in the Midwest, and we don't have a bunch of statues there. But in the South, where a lot of the fighting and stuff went on in the Civil War, and slaves were freed, thank goodness. There is a lot of that. There's statues everywhere. They're very proud of their Southern heritage, and so forth and so on. So I think that sometimes, to me, it doesn't make sense in the respect of, yes, I know what they kind of stands for according to them, but it's part of history. But we do have people, rednecks, a lot of times they'll call them in the South, who will go and drive their vehicles with a big Confederate flag, hanging out, or they'll raise the Confederate flag in their yard, and that's always been very controversial. So I can see where they think it stands for that, and they're upset about that. But why don't we put up more statues with the black heroines of our time, as well as the white people? That would be nice. Martin Luther King statues, and I'm sure they exist, but things like that throughout our society, I think, is just as important as figures in the Civil War. So I'm kind of mixed feelings about that. I can understand why they want them gone, but yet I think, well, it's a part of history, and we just need to take it as that. So.
Okay, I think I'll end questions related to race relationship in America. I will move on to the Native Americans. Did you come across any Native Americans while living in the United States of America?
Yes, I have. I'm from Iowa originally, and in Iowa, where I'm from, in Marshalltown, it's kind of in the middle of Iowa, there is a settlement where Native Americans live. Our government was gracious enough after we came to where they lived to give them small little plots of land. So it's really tragic too. But here we're gonna put you in this nice little piece of land, and this is yours, and you can live there while we take all the rest of it. It's horrific. So the injustices that we did to the Native Americans are really horrific as well. So there's settlements. There's actually what they call reservations, which are still controlled by the government, and settlements actually the Native Americans control. So in this area, I can't say I really went to school with a lot of them because it was kind of off in a distance enough where they kind of kept to their, community. But I used to work with a Native American. I've had different contacts with them throughout. I find them to be lovely people and to be rather stoic. A lot of times they don't, show their feelings, or they kind of keep them in a little bit. They do have a very high incidence of alcoholism in the Native American community. In the community that was near me, the settlement, one thing that they can do, since it's their land, is they can build, casinos. So a lot of times throughout the country, the Native American settlements and so forth, they're very impoverished. They don't have much money and so forth. But the thing that is enabled them to do when they do open up these casinos is they can generate, money, and they can generate jobs, and they, have purpose. And then perhaps they don't drink as much alcohol because now they have purpose in a job, and they don't have all, the worries and so forth. So, yes, Native Americans, I very much respect them. I went to powwows before where they do their Native American dancing and they do their chanting, and they're all dressed up in their Native American attire. I love doing that. It was great to see. And then they serve some of their foods from their culture as well. So yes, I've done horrible things to them as well, the white man. So we've done a lot of horrible things throughout history. It's horrible.
I think historical wrongs were committed against the Native Americans. And when the white settlers came into the United States of America, these people were driven into the mountain ranges, and they were systematically wiped out, or marginalized, or penalized, or maybe suppressed, oppressed and compressed. What do you think about that? Do they have grievances towards the white Americans even now?
I think that any other type of race probably has some grievances towards the white man because of how we've treated people in the past. For some reason, they find themselves to be a superior race, which of course I don't agree with. I think we're all equal regardless. And even your socioeconomic means, I think we should all be equal as well. But yeah, it's other, we have Mexican people that come over here, and I think the white people will bad talk them. I think we discussed in our earlier discussion, the borders and so forth, and how people feel about them coming. Again, I try to embrace all races. I have Hispanic friends who I dearly love and find them to be very warm and kind. Instead of calling me Annette, however, they call me Anita. So very endearing to me, but they've been very loving and supportive. I used to work near a Mexican restaurant, so I befriended the people who owned it and worked there and served there, and it became a very loving environment with them. I still go and see them frequently. So yes, we have there's still, I think, racial tensions with everybody. They don't like the racial border thing because people can come over here and get dual citizenships. I kind of feel differently about that. I certainly embrace people from anywhere coming to our country. I don't know why we as white people think that we have so much power in this country, because all of us had our ancestors come from other countries. So, it's not like we were born here. They were immigrants who came from different countries, and that's how we got here. So, for some reason, we feel like we are superior in our society, and it's not the case at all. It's rather I don't even know how to describe it. It's just we just feel like we're the upper crust just because you're white, and the thing is we're not. And so I embrace people from other places, anywhere from. We have lots of people from India here, and I have many people that I dearly love from India that are here, and so I think that. And I think that the blending of cultures, we're still kind of segregated. Like in New York City, you have, your boroughs. The Italians live in this borough, and the Irish people are in this borough. And I don't know if it's as stringent as it used to be, but they still kind of separate themselves out according to their culture. But I see that disappearing a lot, because I think that we in America have lost a lot of our culture. We aren't as we don't value it maybe as much as our ancestors did. So.
Yes, understood. I think I like your open-hearted approach to the migrants coming into the United States of America. Can you tell me about the specialities of the migrants that you have come across who have come from different parts of the world into America?
The specialities, how do you mean? What makes them different? Or
Okay. What do you see in them? What are the good things that you come across in them?
What I see, actually, people who come here from other countries, whether from Asia, or they're from they're Hispanic, or wherever it may be, as a general rule, I find them to be hard workers, good people, and want to come into our society, and just make a living and make their dream come true, like our ancestors did. And I find actually that there's very few of those people who live off the system, our government system, and have, are disabled or try to, get funds from the government to live instead of working. I find that to be something that the white people in our community are much more apt to do. So people from other cultures come in here, I think, and they look for the American dream, which is to be able to have the equal opportunity to make it somehow, and even make it big or become successful. Because that's one thing that you have, whether it be through education or what other means that they have. A lot of the people from India, own lots of gas stations and hotels and things like that. Very big community. Most hotels, if you ask, it's a lot of times Indian owned. So a gas station near me is people from, actually I think he told me he was from Jordan, but lovely people again. So I don't know if I answered your question, sir.
Yes, of course, definitely. And tell me, you worked with the drug abusers, especially those who had this, who had been abused mentally, physically, at domestic settings, in social frameworks, and also people who had drug problems, and you always had a kind of very sympathetic attitude. Even now, you do work to bring them to the right path, and so on and so forth. Can you describe to us the experiences that you had with those people?
Well, I've been a nurse for many years, and for 15 years I was a forensic nurse examiner. So I took care of people who were victims of crime and violence. So whether it be, child abuse, rape, domestic violence, elder abuse, just violence in general, stabbings and things like that. So what my role was to do to spend usually several hours with them, because it took a long time to get the information you needed. You had to document, and then to document their injuries and so forth. We had to take pictures and do diagrams and things like that. But anyway, I took care of hundreds and hundreds of victims over 15 years. So very tragic. I've heard a lot of stories. I've seen a lot of things. And just when you think that you've seen it all, you haven't. There's a lot of domestic violence still within our society that exists. And sometimes it's not just the physical, it's the mental and emotional psyche that is damaged as well. And sometimes some people do just that, and that's all. But most women, and it's usually women, I have taken care of a couple of guys for domestic violence. But men usually aren't forthcoming with that type of thing. They don't want to, it's embarrassing for them. I even took care of a sexual assault victim before, more than one, that was a male. And it's a lot more humiliating for them. I took care also of people from different cultures that would come, for instance, that might be sexually assaulted. And I took care of a lady one time, and she was not sure where they were from, Nigeria, somewhere over there. And she was, I'm trying to figure out what country it is that does the female, like the female circumcision type thing. But there's a country that does it. But she came in, and very often people think victims of crimes that have been raped and so forth are they kind of have their Hollywood view of how they should react. They're very, very startled. They don't want anybody to touch them, and that type of thing. And every woman, every child, or whoever responds differently. And you very rarely see that kind of startled or afraid look. But the lady I took care of that day was from that country, who was very much the victim. A husband's friend had come over and forced himself on her, and then the husband brought her in to be examined, which made it a little uncomfortable. I actually had to he wanted to be at the bedside and try to help interpret the things, but the bad thing is I couldn't really feel like she was open enough to me about what happened in her situation. So I've taken care of hundreds and hundreds of victims of crimes and violence. And, some people are able to, I also did psychiatry for a while, and some people are able to get over those things, and other people, it becomes part of their lives, and it defines them. So, so through the years that I've had them, and then when I did psychiatry, I had, of course, people who had been victims of and came in with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxieties, depression. I spent a lot of time with my people. I don't have a huge psychiatry background. I have more of a lifetime background and just experience. And I would spend a lot of time with them. I was very good at it. I'm actually just getting ready to accept another job in psychiatry. But the thing is that I always wanted to build up their self-esteem and build them up as people and tell them that they are valued and they have purpose. And so I spent a lot of time. I'm a people builder. I would spend a lot of time trying to do that, at least in psychiatry, and also people who had, drug addictions as well. So back with the people building thing, there's a poem called Desiderata. We've talked about this before. It has a lot of wisdom and knowledge. It's written in 1927 by Max Ehrmann. But over the years, I've quoted it several times to patients, that I felt like needed the message. But the message is, and I think about every video that I come and interview, I always bring up Desiderata. So go look it up. But it has a piece in there that says, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. And beyond wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You're a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. So it has a great message, and in that, you're here and you have purpose. And I would try to get people to do that. Drug addiction is a different beast in itself. Drug addicts will lie, cheat, and steal. I have a half brother who had an addiction problem for a large percentage of his life. He's been clean for several years now. Thank goodness he finally got clean. But the thing is, drugs have just such a pull on you. He was in and out of, correctional facilities for quite a while, during his drug addiction. So they're different because they will lie to you. And I now treat once a month. I see patients in a pain clinic that I treat with Suboxone, but I don't just give it to the pain people. I have some people who are addicts as well. But they will lie to you. They'll have a drug screen come back positive something, and they'll sit there and lie to you about it. And I've just come to learn that. But them too, I spend a lot of time in trying to help. And usually people who do drugs are doing it because they're trying to put a Band-Aid and self-medicate with the drugs for depression, psychiatric issues, depression, anxiety, things like that. And so they use in order to get through life. And like I said before, sometimes these people that tragic things have happened to, I say, don't let that define you. You kind of have to box it up, put it away somewhere, and then move on with your life so you can have, achieve some sort of happiness, because that's what we all want, is happiness. But yeah, I've seen a lot of things through the years.
Okay.
And yeah.
Yeah, and actually, see, our students, they are sometimes stressed out because of the exam pressure and so on and so forth. What advice do you have for them in order to ease themselves out, or in order to bring their tensions down to a minimal level?
Well, one thing I would say, because anxiety is an energy, and you can use it destructively and let it kind of overtake you and become more anxious, and some people have panic attacks. So you can let that happen with it. You can take that same energy and you can filter it into positive means. And so I do it through poetry, or I used to make jewelry, keep this and this busy, and then you won't be as anxious. But when you're in college, most of your anxieties are things that are due. I have a big paper due, I have to do this or that, or capstone project, or whatever it may be. So one thing you don't want to do is what I used to do, because I'm the biggest procrastinator. So I tend to take things that I don't want to do and put them off, right, until the last minute. And that's the wrong thing to do. So my advice to you would be not to procrastinate, to instead face your fear, or face the undesired thing, and just delve into it, because then that will make you less anxious. So don't put it off. Do it ahead of time, because then you become really anxious at the last minute. You try to do, the night before your paper's due, you're trying to do it. I've had many nights like that. Don't do as I do as I say, like I would tell my children. So.
Yes, that's correct. I think that's a good advice to my students. And can you tell me something about the disparities, the economic disparities, the social disparities, the political disparities that we come across in the United States of America?
Well, there's a lot of social disparities. We still have people who are socioeconomically impaired. They don't have lives where they have much. We still have homeless people in homeless shelters, and people, and a large percentage of those people are drug addicts, or people with psychiatric problems, or both. But so we still have that within our society. But I'm not saying that everybody who's in that type of situation this happens to, but we do have, for instance, if you have a person who's impoverished because they don't want to work, or they don't have any drive to do anything, then, or sometimes they have medical reasons that they can't help. But people do have free will to do what they want, as far as being able to, if they have the desire, the drive, and the tenacity, they can go out there and try to turn or reverse their situation around, which some people do. But we still have a lot of impoverished people. So we do have people, who are less fortunate and have means that will, of course, help them, whether it's be through time that they donate at shelters, or monies, or things like that. So it's still part of our lives, socioeconomical, there's not an equalness. We do have a capitalistic society. As far as politics is concerned, I'd like to say I'm really involved in it, but I kind of checked out of politics a long time ago. So I think I discussed this with you the other day. I don't trust any of them, to be perfectly honest. I want that we have political figures in office who want the best for us. And I'm not saying that they're all bad, but there's a lot of I'll scratch my back, good old boy system in the political arena, and people who are there for self-serving purposes, and not maybe as much of a service for their communities. So, we have a president, who used to go on social media and voice his opinions. I don't even know why that should be allowed personally, but I kind of checked out of, hold on a second, I got to drink this.
Okay, please do so.
Checked out the political system a long time ago. I used to be more active in it. But so last year, I told you this before, when it was time to vote, I flipped a coin. So that's how because it's kind of like the lesser of two evils. Which one do I want? So I didn't feel strong. Well, I felt really strongly about one of them, that I did not really want him in office anymore. But I thought, hey, I'll just flip a coin, heads, tails. So one of them won. I think heads won. I'm just trying to. I can tell you who I voted for, but I can tell you because it wasn't even a personal choice. It was the flip of a coin, but it came up Biden, so I voted for Biden. So who ended up winning, but yeah. So don't follow the politics so much. I probably should more, but I kind of checked out of the news a long time ago when 9/11 happened. For personal reasons, I told you that I had dad and brother who were in a tragic plane crash, and it was a fiery plane crash. So that image just instilled in my mind, kind of gave me a little PTSD. So I decided I was going to quit watching the news and the negativity. So that's what I did. And the news also has the social media is very strong in swaying public opinions, and they can kind of maneuver public opinions however they want. So I kind of, in my own person, maybe I should try to be in politics and run for office somewhere.
Of course. At the regional level, you can try your hand in it. Okay, see, what about the family system in the United States of America? We are very curious to know about that. In India, we have this joint family system, nuclear family system. What about the family system that exists, family system as such in the United States of America?
It's a tragedy also. So you have the nuclear family, your families stay together and they care for each other, and you have this good close-knit system where we have gotten away from that. I think that used to exist through the years. It has disintegrated. So we no longer have that wonderful nuclear family and the values. When I was growing up,
Sheena, please wait for it. Sheena, please mute yourself, please. Okay, please continue.
Okay. So when I was growing up, I remember that we had family reunions where you'd go once a year, and and then you know how you're related to people and know your family, and we don't have that. Of course, here, I think you all stay with your families for long periods of time. I'm single. My children are grown. I live alone. I live with my hairy daughter, my dog, who hopefully won't bark during this. So I remember, though, it's interesting, probably, I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, my oldest son suggesting that, actually, I think even less than that we buy a big house together and all live in it together. So he actually had suggested that at one time. But it's good. I think that what you have and that you have your focus on the nuclear family and the closeness thing is very important. My parents are both gone. They've been gone for some time. They both died young. But my grandmother just died, and she was almost 102. But she was a glue in the family. And her death will cause a bit of a disintegration within our personal family because, she was the one who kept the family unit together and strived to really instill within us the importance of family. And nowadays, I think it's in our society, it's very tragic. The nuclear family as a whole, as a general rule, doesn't exist anymore like it used to.
Yes, that's a very good answer. Actually, I want to ask so many questions, but we have the time constraint. But as a parting shot, can you read one of your poems which you like the most?
Oh, that I like the most. Oh goodness. I have a book. This is one of my books.
Of course. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm going to read. I think I'll read this. It's called "The Mosaics of My Mind."
Yes, of course. Please go ahead.
In the mosaics of my mind are times both good and sad, times when I have rejoiced, thankful for what I had. As bits and pieces of my life who make me who I am, they lay out creating a work of art, my story's diagram. In the mosaics of my mind, there are moments of gloom. Steadfast in my faith, my situations did not consume. For I always kept in mind that this too will eventually pass. I was strong in constitution, not fragile like broken glass. In the mosaics of my mind, I knew who I would become, a woman who could withstand storms, my eye on the rising sun. I'm capable of compassion. I can feel another's pain. I can find joy in others' happiness and what in life they gain. In the mosaics of my mind, I abhor prejudice and hate. I believe one has control over their destiny and fate. Never one to like toxicity. I prefer a harmonious life, one that I can happily enjoy, not laden with burden or strife. In the mosaics of my mind, I'm content in who I have become. I want to leave, I'm sorry, I want to positively impact another's life before each day is done. I want to live each day to its fullest, something new each day to find. I want others to fondly remember me when it becomes the end of my time. So that is the mosaics of my mind.
Actually, it was a good rendition. There's no doubt about that. I would like to ask my students. See, that was a good rendition. There's no doubt about it. It was a good rendition, and we enjoyed it. See, I would like to ask my students. Does anybody have an answer for her? If you would like to ask her any question, you are most welcome. It's your time. Because it's an special opportunity. If you would like to ask or to pose any question, I think a question is coming in. So, definitely it will be read out. Aishwarya or somebody else, please read out. Okay, and Teji, there is a question answer section. So the moderator will read out the question to you. Okay, please, Aishwarya, Sheena, somebody should read out the question.
I'll read out the questions for you. If there is doubt, you can read your questions in the chat box.
What I didn't quite hear. Did you say something
about? She said that the questions will be posted in the chat box. That's what it is.
Okay. Okay. Well, there was one in the chat box.
Yes.
Anaga Suresh Kumar, he asked, works as a nurse practitioner by day and poet by night, and also has been recognized by Cambridge who for showing dedication, leadership, and excellence in all aspects of forensic nursing. How was the experience of traveling in the path of your passion altogether? How did you manage all the hurdles that came up from time to time? at the same time spreading positivity everywhere.
How did you do this juggling act?
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's interesting. I listened to that and looked at that, and that somebody must have been on the internet, and because I have not put in any of my bios the who's who thing. So I was actually surprised to hear that. I thought somebody's been on the internet looking me up. So so how did I think that I had a father who died at a young age. He was only 37, and I was 17 at the time. But he very much instilled into me, and he would talk to me good values, morals, and coping things, and just kind of a strong constitution. Never, one thing he taught me that ended up coming true and fruition was, don't totally rely upon a man. So I've always been a strong woman as far as I picked a career that I could, excel in, that I could do things. I've done many things in my nursing career, and nurse practitioner career, but it kind of put me in a position where I was actually the breadwinner of the family. But as life has went by and tragedies have happened, the death of my dad and brother or whatever it may be, I had 2 divorces, and how do I make it through it? I just have the strong constitution that I know that there's going to be another day. Tomorrow brings new insights. Tomorrow brings new opportunities for us to, and I knew that I was in charge of my own happiness, and I'm in charge of what direction my life takes. And the other thing, I'm very, very, I'm a very giving and loving person. And I want everyone to know their value. So I really try to build people up and let them know their worth and that they are valued. And so that is a very important thing for me. And that was important with my children too. When my children were growing up, I made sure that they valued people. They would cut somebody down, okay, now you have to say 2 good, nice things about them. So to always try to see the good in somebody, even though there might be a lot of bad, but to see that there is good. So I kind of just roll with it, and try to do the best that I can. I just have a strong constitution. It's kind of who I am. My grandmother, who lived to 102, is that way. So maybe I've got her genes that way. Maybe I'll live that long. Who knows? But it's kind of how I do it.
And tell you one more question related to poetry. How did the process of poetry, how did the process of poetry writing, how did it come to you? How do you do it? Once you put the pen on paper, how does it proceed? How does it move ahead?
Yeah. Well, I didn't do much writing. I've always known I'm a writer throughout my life. I knew I had it in me. And I've done a little bit of poetry, not much, until last year. And last year I had a poem that I wanted to get published, and then I needed to start writing. So in a very short period of time, I wrote probably close to 100 poems in a month. I'm still a prolific writer today. It's my addiction, my passion. So I write every day now. How does it happen with me? Many different ways. It can be what I'm feeling at a time. I use a lot of picture prompts, and so I'll take it. And I wrote when recently with a lady who was crying. It was her demons, and so I'll write things that come to me by looking at the picture, or you can even give me the title. I write very fast. I'm off the cuff. I don't mull over it for a while. Very rarely. Some people will do it over several days and they'll develop it. I don't work like that. It just flows, and ideas come to me just very quickly and fast. It just evolves. So it's rather an innate thing. I think it's a gift that I have. I write very simplistically, and as you know, and that's very important for me as well, because I think a lot of poets make the mistake of writing in riddles, where it only makes sense to them, but then to the reader, they look at it and it's like, it might not make sense. So I think that if you write just plainly, it's easier to emote people than if perhaps you're rather elusive in your writing. Sometimes I'm a little elusive in that it'll be a little mysterious in there, but it's pretty straightforward usually.
Yes. I think that will bring this section to an end. We have the valedictory function, so just wait. Aishwarya, the word of thanks. Thank you so much, Annette, for coming, and we have been enlightened by your
Thank
presence.
you.
Yes, for your talk and your, explicit answers to all the questions. Very clear cut, discernible, explicit answers to almost all the questions. And you have stood your ground. Make no mistake about that. And you have answered to all the questions very convincingly. Does anybody have any question? If so, please pose. Otherwise, we will get into the valedictory section. I assume that you don't have. So please take up. Okay, please wait for it.
Questions
Okay.
raised by Sunina Sahol. There are questions raised by Sunina. How can develop our poetry skills?
I
How
think
can
the
we?
best. Mhm. Did you have something else? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay. I have a lot of people come to me and ask me to teach them, and I don't have any formal teaching. It just is kind of in me. So what I tell them is just to start writing, and I think it's good for you to read others' poetry. You know, the Facebook community has a huge poetry community, and with great poets in it. And you can learn a lot by reading other people's writings and reading classic poets, you know, that are famous in history for poetry. I think is very good. And developing your own style and your own kind of signature in the poetry community, I think is important. I kind of change mine up a little bit every once in a while. I like to, but so I think that's the most important thing to do, and just to start doing it, just start writing. You know, you don't have to, you know, write the first time and think you're going to write a masterpiece. You can, you know, develop your style and technique and so forth as you go along. So that's what I would say about developing your poetry skills.
Thank you so much for answering to that question. Does anybody have any other question? Because yes, it's coming thick and fast. Okay, please read out.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question raised by Sanuja. Ma'am, how did you end up choosing the title Poetry for your poetry collection?
That's a good question. When I think of potpourri, I think of a fragrant, you know, mixture of dried things, but it's a mixture and a blend of things that they kind of come together to, you know, form potpourri. So I felt like my poetry was kind of a mixture of things, whether it be something I wrote for my child or it be, you know, some kind of fictionalized thing that I went off on. It was just kind of a, you know, conglomeration of a lot of things. So that's kind of why I came up with the potpourri.
Anybody else would like to pose a question? Okay, one more. Yes, it's okay. Please read out.
Next question raised by Andrea. Ma'am, what's your opinion about Indian English poets and their works? Have you come across any?
Well, I mean, people from India who write in English. I have many, I've come across tons of them on the Facebook poetry community. I read their stuff all the time. I think that of the people I know in the poetry community, the Indians probably have the largest presence and have been very welcoming to me. But I love to read their work. I have read their work all the time. I have even a lot of people on my admin staff there. Most of them are from India. So I love the poets from India and think that they do wonderful work. I recognize them every week on my Facebook site, The Passion of Poetry. So I think they're wonderful. Is there another question there?
Next question is raised by Libin John. Ma'am, which was your moment in your poetic life?
I think my aha movement or moment was that I finally wrote something that people love. When I went through my divorce about 4 years ago, I was staying with a friend. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had something poetic come to my mind, and I wrote it on my phone real quick. And then the next morning when she got up, I said, "Listen to this," and whatever it was gone. I don't know what happened, but it was gone. So on my way home, I had to drive about an hour home. I wrote on the way home, and so this became kind of my mantra. So it was a poem that kind of told about the relationship, and in the end, I end up strong. And it's 3 minutes long. And I can recite it by heart. It's the only one I can recite by heart. So it's called Broken Dreams. Actually, it's in my potpourri book. So my aha moment was that people I would recite that to. I mean, I don't know how many people I've made cry, including men, with the poem, and really touched a lot of people. And they say, "Oh my gosh, yes, that's me. I know exactly what you mean by all of that." So my aha moment was I was able to touch people with my poetry, my words, and that's why everyone encouraged me to get it published. So my aha moment was, well, maybe I can write. It was quite some time since I had written, and I was able to write something so moving that would make several people cry. So I think that was my aha moment.
Thank you, ma'am. And next question is raised by Adila. Ma'am, can you give a brief explanation about the themes that you have used in these works?
Oh goodness. Well, I write about love. I write a lot about love. I write about domestic violence situations. I've written one about rape that was in my second book. I write about humanity. I write about, and then I write fictionalized stuff where I just go off on Never Never Land, which I kind of like the fictionalized stuff. But a lot of times I try to have lessons in them. I wrote a fictionalized one that's called The Ballad of Ned that talks about bullying. So I write about all different subjects. I have no limitations to subject matters. Whatever you give me, I'll write about.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any doubt? Is there any other questions?
Okay. Two more questions came in. I saw that. Yes. Two more questions came in. I saw that.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Next question is raised by Noel. If you weren't a poet, what would you be doing?
Well, I've always wanted to write a novel, and I want to write a novel. So, and I still might have it in me. So I probably need to start by short stories, but that has really been on my bucket list way before poetry was. So I would write a novel.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question is raised by Devi Nandana. A message you'd like to give to young budding poets.
Well, my message is to hopefully develop passion for poetry, because it's a wonderful thing, and I think it's wonderful for us to write and to contribute to the literary world. But I also would say, do not give up. And if you write something you don't think it's good enough, just keep writing. You'll get better. And again, look at other people's works and kind of look at those things as what direction you could go with your poetry or not, and develop your own way. So that's what I would say.
So I think please get into the valedictory section, please. That's time. It's time that we needed to do that.
So that was a wonderful interactive session and a wonderful, incredible poem. Thank you so much, sir and ma'am.
Thank you.
Due to time constraints, we are winding up the session. Now, I invite Miss Aishwarya Biju of second year BA English to propose the vote of thanks.
It is indeed a proud privilege to acknowledge the souls responsible for the success of today's session. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank the principal of KCMT, Reverend Father Joshi Chirankari CMI, an esteemed individual of lovely manners and optimistic way of life. On behalf of the Department of English, I thank him from the bottom of my heart. Miss Annette Tarpley, the Honorable Speaker of the day, has taken us to a world of various intricate aspects through the interactive session, Interdisciplinary Interaction with a Bard of America. Through her spontaneous articulation and lovely presentation and in-depth approach, she has made this session so worthwhile and interesting. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank
Mr.
you.
Mr. Cijo Joseph Chennelil, the dynamic HOD of the English department, is our pillar and pride. The English department has reached enviable heights under his inspiring leadership. I express my sincere gratitude to you, sir, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also thank the brains and hands behind this webinar, Ms. Sheena Susan Baby. Organizing this program in such a splendid way and stellar manner deserves an applause. Last but not least, I express my heartfelt gratitude to the students of the English department of KCMT for their wholehearted support. I thank you all, the participants, for the valuable presence during these uncertain times. Thank you.
We have come to the end of the webinar. Once again, reminding you that the link for the feedback form is given in the chat box. Kindly fill up the form and submit it. Thanking all of you once again, and good night.
Okay, and thank you so much. Okay, thank you for your presence over here.